We tested 3 Glidey Fairway drivers with MA40, MA50, and MA60 players, and the same disc went the furthest for all 3, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best disc. For this test, we have the Discraft Cicada, the Discmania Essence, and the Kastaplast Falk. Each of our 3 Masters testers threw each disc 6 times, from the same tee and on the same general line. We also had TechDisc reference speeds for each player, so you can get a better idea which arm might be the closest to yours. First up is MA40. The Falk went the furthest at about 310 feet. The Cicada was next at about 289 feet, and the Essence averaged about 263 feet. But the thing that stood out to me was the Cicada. The Falk went further, but the Cicada was the one I felt like I could put in the same area over and over. Next up is our MA50 tester, throwing around 50 miles per hour, and this is where the distance between these 3 discs got a lot closer. The Falk went the furthest at about 253 feet. The Cicada was right behind it at 247 feet, so there was only about 6 feet difference between the 2. The Essence averaged about 233 feet. What stood out more was how consistent the Falk was for him. There was only 24 feet between his shortest and furthest throw, so he's getting the distance without giving up the consistency. For our MA60 tester, the Falk went the furthest again, at about 230 feet. The Cicada was right behind it at about 222 feet, and the Essence was around 214 feet, so the Falk still gave him the most distance, but the Cicada stayed pretty close and his throws with it were the tightest of the 3. So if you're more worried about putting the disc in the same area than squeezing out every foot, the Cicada is worth a look. Alright, here's my takeaway for Masters players. If we're talking pure distance, the Falk was the clear winner. It won the average distance at every power level, MA40, MA50, MA60. So if you've got the arm speed to control it, the Falk gives you the biggest flight. And honestly, MA50, the Falk was better than I expected. It wasn't just the longest disc, it had the tightest spread of the entire test for them. So it wasn't just giving us distance, it was repeatable too. But the Discraft Cicada, I paid close attention to it. At MA40, it had the tightest distance window. At MA50, it was only about 6 feet behind the Falk. And at MA60, it stayed close and had the tightest spread again. And that matters, because glide only helps if you can still use the flight. The Essence, it wasn't bad. It's still a good feeling glidey fairway driver. But in this test, it just didn't separate itself from the Falk and the Cicada. For me, it's pretty simple. For distance, I'd look at the Falk. For repeatable control at MA40, MA60 power, I'd take a hard look at the Cicada. At MA50, the Falk gave us the strongest overall result. If you already bagged the Essence, I'd test it side by side with these other 2 discs and see if you get anything extra. And that's what I'd take from this test. Glide can absolutely help, but only if you can still control where the disc finishes. That's why testing at our arm speeds matters, because the disc that looks good on paper may not be the one that fits us best. And for the final 10-10 review, we're going even more understable. Lat 64 Diamond, Prodigy F9, Discmania Function, and DGA Vortex. That test is going to answer a different question. Are these discs helpful for Masters players, or are they too flippy? If you're a Masters player trying to play smarter and play longer, this channel is built for you. And if you missed episode 1 where the rhythm surprised us, watch that video next. Play smarter, play longer.